This week we're doing my second region deep dive in the region of Tian Xia, and we are focused on Minkai. Now, Minkai is the Pathfinder analog of Japan. It is a very interesting and probably, I would say, the most detailed nation that we have in all of Tian Xia. I'm also coupling with this video a look at the Forest of Spirits, which is the northern border of Minkai, and also a look at the Sea of Xidao, which is a sea, but also includes an underwater kingdom of its own that I'm going to talk a little bit about in this video. This was another really fun one to put together. Enjoy. The history of Minkai and its surrounding region. The nation of Minkai is one of the most culturally and historically important countries in all of Tian Xia. It forms a long peninsula off the northeastern coast of the continent. It is therefore geographically separated from the rest of Tian Xia by various seas on its coast and by the dense Forest of Spirits on its northern border. Its long and jagged coastline abuts with various seas and oceans, including the Songo Sea and the Aokori Gulf in the north, the Okayo Ocean in the east, and the Surui Gulf and the Naikang Bay in the south, as well as the Xidao Sea and Sapphire Sound in the west. This geographic separation has created a specific culture, unique to this land, and further refined by the direct involvement of some significant Tian deities, especially the goddess Shizuru, as we shall see. So let's jump into the history of this unique nation, starting in the earliest days of the Tian calendar, the pre-human period known as the Age of Monsters. In the Age of Monsters, northern Tian Xia was the domain of various tribes of warring monsters known as the Yaoguai. Fortunately, the peninsula of Minkai was not their chief battleground, but they were abundant in the lands of modern-day Chuye, Wanshu, and further west across the Kyojin Mountains. At the shortest point between Chuye and the peninsula of Minkai, however, it became possible for these monsters to cross over into Minkai as well, and some of their ruins and ancient grave sites can be found in the Sankyodai Mountains even to this day. The Yaoguai were not alone in the Age of Monsters. In this time, some of the gods created specialized nature spirits, whose sacred task was to shelter the gods' creations, effectively to protect nature, but also to ensure that nature had the opportunity to multiply and grow. The spirits, called kami, were not dispersed to all parts of the world, only to select locations, and the greatest concentration of them all was in the Forest of Spirits. Eventually, some of these kami would fail in their sacred duties, and in so failing, they became subject to a kind of fall from grace, becoming corrupted and evil. These evil kami came to be known as the Oni. Although the Forest of Spirits was the place of origination of the kami, these spirits would soon spread across Tian Xia, especially in areas close to Minkai, including the Sapphire Sound and the Chuyikai Forest of Chuye. Around the year -6000 IC, the Age of Monsters gave way to the Age of Dragons. As described in my Tian Xia overview video, the dragons came to Tian Xia on the instruction of the goddess Shizuru, who tasked them with paving the way for the coming of humanity, whom she said would bring peace to the realm. In the execution of their task, the dragons began to build small empires for themselves, taking leadership roles among the various species that inhabited Tian Xia at this time. One of the places where their presence was most keenly felt was in the Sea of Xidao, where various sea dragons settled after Shizuru gave them their mission. The sea dragons of Xidao encountered the primitive Athamuru species, who had settled in the various reefs that line the western and eastern coastlines of Xidao. Athamarus are fish-like humanoids who live in tight-knit undersea communities, focused on subsistence farming of seaweed, the domestication of various species of deep-sea animals, but especially eels, and the creation of beautiful art made of coral and scrimshaw. They often have a striking appearance with brightly colored skin, frills, barbels, and crested fins, typically matching their reef environment. As the sea dragons began to sponsor individual tribes, the Athamaru developed more advanced societies, eventually dividing themselves into various city-states, many of which still exist today. Eventually, even though various dragons had sponsored these as individual city-states, a kind of undersea confederacy formed. In Xidao, city-states would follow their own government and dragon emperors, but they also vowed to protect one another from the terrors of the deep should the need arise. The largest city-state to form in this period was Yashabaru, whose leader serves as a figurehead for the entire region even to this day. Eventually, during the Age of Dragons, humanity arrived in Tian Xia, establishing its first great empire around the year -4000 IC, the Empire of Taumata, which stretched along a series of islands from the southern continent of Sarasan south of Tian Xia all the way north to the southern tip of Minkai. Its capital was located where the Shibobekes Islands lie today. As we know from my Tian Xia overview video, two apocalyptic events occurred in fairly rapid succession that destroyed the Empire of Taumata. The first of these was the Earthfall Cataclysm of minus 2793 IC, in which a powerful meteorite impacted the other side of the world, causing such terrible flooding that much of Taumata was submerged by the raging oceans, and the second of which was the eruption of Mount Shibotai in minus 24 IC, which destroyed what was left of the Taumatan peoples in their capital and created the Shibobekas Islands. During this Age of Ashes, human survivors of the Empire of Taumata, located on the southern tip of the Minkai Peninsula, slowly but surely spread out across the land. As other human peoples had found it across Tian Xia, the Age of Ashes was a difficult period, reflecting an almost total collapse of the advanced and sophisticated society the Taumatans once had. Nevertheless, humanity endured, and spread across the peninsula, constructing many small villages and settlements all across the length and breadth of the land. Early Tianmin people led largely agrarian lives, and once sunlight came back into the world, it was seen as a saving grace. In ancient times, life in Minkai fully revolved around the sun, and Shizuru, as the goddess of the sun, was therefore of paramount importance. Everyone would awaken to witness the dawn and to perform a ritual of devotion called the Hinode no Inori, the sunrise prayer. After the sun would set, the dark hours would be a time for loved ones, stories, and quiet reflection. The Age of Ashes wasn't just difficult on humanity, and the surging seas and tectonic activity that followed the Earthfall Cataclysm didn't devastate Taumata alone. The Athamaru city-states of the Sea of Xidao also suffered greatly. The Ayamaru Trench split open beneath the sea, like a great underwater scar rending the seafloor. From this deep trench came all kinds of nightmarish creatures from the deep. The sea dragons that had sponsored the Athamaru kingdoms came to the defense of their beleaguered peoples, but many died, and others, disillusioned with their mission after the Earthfall Cataclysm, retreated from the world entirely. Since that time, the Athamaru have become self-governed, and the proximity of the dangers of the Ayamaru Trench had the effect of making them both more militarized and yet more open to trade alliances with the surface races. Such treaties would have to wait, however, because the surface world would take much longer to recover. In the year 88 in central Tian Xia, the Empire of Yixing established itself, forming the first great empire of Tian Xia since the fall of Taumata. Its emperor, Emperor Aolin, was not human at all, but a powerful and ambitious sovereign dragon. Despite the relatively rapid spread of urbanization in central Tian Xia, life in Minkai remained largely provincial until the year 2600 in the imperial calendar. In that year, the goddess Shizuru presented herself to 5 notable families in Minkai, to bless them and encourage them to unite the peninsula, instructing each of them that they were important to her and that they had the potential in themselves to be great rulers, if they would rise to the challenge. These events had been prompted by an incident 99 years earlier, in which Shizuru's herald had visited the Dragon Emperor Aolin and demanded he step down and pass rulership of the empire over to a human successor. Aolin effectively ignored Shinanome's request, putting in place a puppet emperor and ruling his realm in all but name. So Shizuru's outreach to the 5 great families of Minkai was to encourage humanity to build an empire to rival that of Yixing in the central region. The 5 families to whom Shizuru had spoken were as follows. The Amatatsu family, a family from southwestern Minkai who had a reputation for producing traders, explorers, and adventurers. The Higashiyama family, a family from southeastern Minkai who were respected as scholars and pious worshippers of the goddess Shizuru. The Shojinawa family, a family from close to the border with the Forest of Spirits, who had a reputation for revering ancestral spirits, raising fantastic shrines, and being incredible sculptors and artisans. The Sugimatu family, a family from northwestern Minkai, who were reputed as peacemakers and who have often been considered the imperial family most in touch with the needs of the people. And the Teikoku family, a family from central western Minkai who were noted for the quality and skill of their swordsmen, the skill of their blacksmiths, and their strong association with tradition and honor. Of these families, it is perhaps not surprising that it was the Teikoku family that first embraced Shizuru's promise, and they quickly assembled an army with which to unify the land. In less than 12 years, Teikoku the Chosen became the first shogun, and he called his new empire the Teikoku Shogunate and founded its impressive capital city of Udo. Teikoku the Chosen was a skilled military leader, but he was also a wise shogun, knowing the limits of his army's abilities to expand. He stopped his expansion at the Forest of Spirits and invested in boatyards and ships to establish a trade relationship with the Athamaru of the Sea of Xidao, the Khans of Hongal, and even tentatively and carefully with the powerful dragon empire of Yixing. In 2790, the famous samurai Zhao Koyu of the Teikoku Shogunate sought to expand the empire's realm beyond the Forest of Spirits. Where Teikoku the Chosen had wisely ended his expansion at the forest's border, Zhao Koyu is actually most well known for his death, after he led an army to the northern reaches of Teikoku and ventured too far into the woods. He and his forces were slaughtered by angry kami. The place of his death came to mark the northernmost limits of the Teikoku shogunate and its modern successor Minkai. After this, subsequent shoguns explored more diplomatic approaches, eventually getting the kami of the forest to agree to the construction of the Spirit Road, which they would use to deepen relationships with the Khans of Hongal. By 2970, this road was completed, and soon enough the friendly relations between the Khan and the shogun were deepened, as open trade flowed between the Khanate of the north and the shogunate of the peninsula. This powerful alliance worried Dragon Emperor Aolin, who conquered the lands of Wanshu and Chuye in 2802. Inadvertently, Aolin strengthened the northern alliances with this conquest. His people were not as experienced in the way of spirits as were the Hongali and the Tianmin, and many of the kami of the Chuyakai forest were killed in the conquest of the land, as the Yixing conquerors struggled to differentiate between the innocent kami of the forest and the haunted grave kami that had emerged in the Chuyakai after Fumeyoshi's betrayal. See my Kami and Oni deep dive video for more details on this. In any case, the mistreatment of the kami of both the Chuyakai Forest and the Sapphire Sound had the effect of deepening the relationship between the kami of the Forest of Spirits and the Hongali Khans and the Tianmin people of the shogunate. In 3800, an explorer and adventurer was born to the famous Imperial Amaterasu family, a man named Agenhei. Agenhei explored the crown of the world, going further north beyond even Hongal and the Changtian Mountains. As a base of operations, he helped establish the Hongali city of Ordu Agenhei, which still to this day serves as a cultural capital to Hongal, as described in my recent Hongal region deep dive video. His journey took him all the way across the polar ice cap, until he reached the Thane lands and discovered the pale-skinned Ulfan people of Avestan. Unfortunately, his triumph was initially suppressed by the Teikoku family, and he himself was ultimately executed by the Teikoku shogun. In 5164, the immortal Dragon Emperor Aolin of Yixing was exiled, thanks to the long dedicated hard work of a vengeful Samsaran from the mountain realm of Ziha. The Empire of Yixing did not last that long without its mighty dragon at its head. In 5576, the empire collapsed in its entirety, and the provinces at its periphery would be among the first to become independent of the larger empire, with the lands of Chuye in particular becoming independent by 5577. Independent Chuye would quickly become a cultural melting pot, with Tianshu people from the center of the continent having come with the Yixing conquest, Tianla people from nearby Hongal, and Tianmin people from Minkai crossing over at the narrowest point of the Sapphire Sound. Tianmin influence can be seen across Chuye, especially in the names of its places and cities. Through its influence of independent Chuye, Tianmin culture also began to deeply affect the Jinin elves on the other side of the Kelsang Mountains. Starting in this time, the people of the Eastern Shogunate and the elves of the Silver Mist Wood began to develop deep ties that endure even to this day. In 5723, the Empire of Yixing's great successor emerged, the Empire of Shu, which quickly re-established itself as the central Tian hegemony. The emergence of this new and powerful empire in the south, however, made the Teikoku shogunate more militarized and more paranoid. A series of successive shoguns continued to increase taxes and funnel those monies into growing their defensive fleet. Isolationist policies also served to weaken the economy, and a tendency among the Teikoku lords towards cronyism and corruption ultimately prompted a violent revolution. The leader of this revolution was a woman named Setsuna Kuga, also sometimes poetically referred to as the world's perfect swordswoman. Kuga's forces burned down the capital of Udo during the final conflict, known as the Battle of Eight Bridges, and after their victory they moved the capital to the important port city of Kasai. The Teikoku shogunate was renamed to Minkai, and significantly, although the five great imperial families would continue to rule Minkai, including the families of Amaterasu, Higashiyama, Shojinawa, Sugimatu, and yes, even the remaining heirs of the Teikoku line, the new position of emperor would pass between the five families, based on a nomination to the position from among the five. Now, even with the new emperor in place, a better balance of power existed, allowing the other four families some ability to countermand the emperor when they were aligned, so as to prevent future corruption among the nobility. Unburdened by previous restrictions, Minkai opened new trade relationships, including trade with the mighty empire of Shu and other more distant areas, and they embraced their newfound freedom with a revived enthusiasm for exploration. As trade and travel flourished, more Minkai travelers came to the silver shrines of the Jinin elves, deepening the bonds between Minkai and the woodland kin to the west. As Minkai waxed in power in the 6500s, the empire of Shu began to wane. and by 6536 the Empire of Shu had dissolved into various warring provinces, a state of affairs which would last for just over 100 years until a man named Wenwu reunited the disparate parts of the old empire and established the new empire of Lunghua. This third empire was more militant and crueler than the Empire of Shu had been, and this strained relations with the Minkai. In 6719, the emperor was a member of the Shojinawa family, Emperor Shojinawa Kenshiro. During his reign, a bandit who had grown up among the brigands in northern Minkai rose up to become a powerful warlord in the wilder northeastern reaches of the peninsula. His name was Anamurumon, and he was fierce and charismatic, and despite his low birth and therefore lack of divine mandate from the goddess Shizuru, he sought the Jade Throne of Minkai for himself. His bandits sacked several cities, abducted and ransomed diplomats, and killed many samurai, terrorizing the entire nation. Anamurumon eventually laid siege to the capital of Kasai, patiently bringing famine and death to its citizenry. This ultimately forced Emperor Shojinawa Kenshiro to sally forth from the gates and face Anamurumon's army on the field. Anamurumon challenged Emperor Kenshiro to single combat, where he proved the superior warrior, cutting down the emperor with a series of well-timed sword strokes. However, as mentioned, the Shojinawa family had always been skilled in the way of spirits, and in his dying breath Kenshiro used the last of his power to rip Anamurumon's soul from his body. Without their leader, Anamurumon's forces were routed by the emperor's reinforcements. Cast into the great beyond, Anamurumon's disembodied spirit appealed to Fumeyoshi, the Tian god of envy and patron of the Oni. Fumeyoshi, pleased with how defiantly and effectively Anamurumon had opposed the 5 families chosen by Shizuru, the Lord of Envy happily answered Anamurumon's plea by returning him to the material plane as one of the Oni, a wind Oni, possessed of great speed and anger. Unfortunately for the resurrected Oni, Anamurumon's delight at being reborn was short-lived, as shortly after he manifested on the material plane, he was trapped in the House of Withered Blossoms by the kami of the Forest of Spirits, a prison the kami maintained there for their most powerful foes. Although Anamurumon would remain trapped for now, his malignance only grew during his confinement, and he would eventually escape to shape the future of Minkai once again. Just over 80 years after Emperor Kenshiro's death in 6800, Amaterasu Agenhei's maps were rediscovered in Minkai. The empire sent explorers to once again cross the crown of the world, and to establish a more permanent trade route with Avestan. A wealth of new commerce flowed in from Avestan to Hongal and Minkai from the north. The northern Avestani raiders of the Thanelands were happy to trade their ill-gotten wealth for rare treasures from Tian Xia, and in time an entire Tianmin community would emerge in the Thanelands' capital of Kalsgard. By 6812, jealous over the new trade routes established by Minkai, the Empire of Lunghua invested considerable expense in expanding northwards, swallowing up the lands of Wanshu and Chuye, and on the other side of the Kyojin Mountains, absorbing the lands west of Jinin that are now called Kaoling. From the northern reaches of this land, they established their own trade route that followed the roaring sky and the Iklin rivers that allowed them to do their own trade with Avestan. Their path, however, took them to the much less wealthy realm of the Mammoth Lords, with whom they established a weaker trade road. In northeast Tian Xia, only the Nephilim kingdom of Tianjing retained its independence from the growing central empire of Lunghua. Then in 7106, the death of prophecy occurred. The empire of Lunghua collapsed. Kaoling was taken by hobgoblins, Chuye was conquered by the Oni, and a mighty kraken from the deep Ayamaru Trench came up from the seabed to claim the kingdom of Wanshu. South of Wanshu, where Lunghua had created an impoverished Tengu kingdom, the new Tengu nation of Quanlai became independent. In Minkai, the Higashiyama ascendancy began. An emperor of the Higashiyama family took power in Minkai shortly after the death of prophecy, and the Higashiyama imperial line would control the seat of the emperor for the next 50 years. Although initially hailed as a strong emperor, a resurgent strength in the wake of the dramatic collapse of some of Tian Xia's central powers, it soon became evident that some sinister forces were at work in Minkai as well. In 7151, the Oni Anamurumon broke free from the House of Withered Blossoms, bringing with him other Oni who had pledged their loyalty to him, calling themselves the Oni of the Five Storms. He directed them to infiltrate every aspect of Minkan society and eliminate the 5 imperial families, clearing the path for their takeover. Less than 3 years after the Oni escaped their confinement, a devastating poisoning occurred at the high house of the imperial Sugimatu family. The Sugimatu heirs vanished from court, and soon there were no longer 5 great families, but only 4. The following year, the Shojinawa family's high house was engulfed in a supernatural freezing black fire. Although some heirs survived, many later claimed that the family had been cursed by the moon for their involvement in dark magic and bloody sacrifices, with others saying it was impossible to distinguish between an Oni and a Shojinawa heir. In 7163, a 12-year-old boy named Soto Takahiro joined a samurai order dedicated to protecting the Higashiyama clan and became the bodyguard of Shigure, the youngest child of the reigning emperor. Shigure grew close to Takahiro, seeing him as more of a brother than his actual sibling. Takahiro would deliberately lose their sparring matches, while Shigure completed Takahiro's history and cultural assignments. What no one at court knew was that Soto Takahiro was a swapped child, not a true member of the Soto family, but the half-human Nephilim child of the Oni lord Anamurumon. Anamurumon had trained the boy from birth, starting with secretly poisoning his mother during childbirth, so Takahiro would have no family to bond with except him, with the goal of ultimately seizing the Jade Throne. Meanwhile, the other great families continued to suffer. In 7165, the Teikoku stronghold was besieged by Oni, and though it is said the fiends suffered significant losses at the hands of the ancient family, the stronghold was destroyed, and the Teikoku lords were wiped out. Later that year, unsure whether this was the work of Emperor Higashiyama or another force, the Yamatatsu family decided it was wisest to leave Minkai. Having succeeded in eliminating the other imperial families, the Yamatatsus fled along the trade route established by their ancestor, changing their name to Kaijitsu to better hide in Avestan. With the other families gone, the Higashiyama family nearly controlled the entire country. In 7170, an oracle named Renshi Maeda, descended from a clan that had once served Anamurumon during his life, offered her services to the Higashiyama family, becoming 19-year-old Takahiro's lover and confidant. With all the pieces now in place, the Oni lord Anamurumon secretly orchestrated the deaths of Shigure's older siblings, leaving Shigure as the sole heir. After his father's death the following year, Shigure ascended the throne, naming Takahiro his bodyguard, and the oracle Maeda as his advisor. A week into the new emperor's reign, Takahiro and Maeda convinced him that an attempt on his life was imminent. Takahiro persuaded Shigure to name him regent of Minkai, while the emperor went into hiding, until the perpetrators could be caught. However, once this was done, Takahiro killed Emperor Higashiyama Shigure, ending the Higashiyama line. Shigure's body was thrown into a profane place known as the Well of Demons, and Takahiro declared himself the Jade Regent, selecting his father Anamurumon as his royal vizier. The old Oni lord spread rumors that the emperor had gone into hiding due to ongoing threats to his life, allowing his son, the Jade Regent Soto Takahiro, to rule unchallenged for over 40 years. In 7212, however, something remarkable occurred. As recounted in the events of the Jade Regent adventure path, loyalist groups working secretly in Minkai sent agents to search for any surviving descendants of Minkai's 5 blessed families. They discovered one in the form of Ameiko Kaijitsu, whose real Tian name was Amatatsu Ameiko, a simple tavern keeper living in the Avestani nation of Varissia, half a world away. A group of heroes chose to support Ameiko in her quest to return to Minkai and overthrow the false tyrant who had claimed her country. An epic quest unfolded, taking the heroes from the wilds of Varissia, across the Linorm kingdoms, over the crown of the world, across the Khanate of Hongal and the Forest of Spirits, and finally to Minkai, a nation that was her birthright, but where she had never set foot herself. They confronted and defeated the pretender, the Jade Regent Soto Takahiro, and once again imprisoned his father, the immortal Oni lord Anamurumon. For the first time in 40 years, a scion of one of the blessed families sits on the Jade Throne, with the crowning of Empress Amatatsu Ameiko. This brings us to today. Minkai is a long and proud history, much of which is quite complex. Since the fall of the Teikoku shogunate, there has been a constant struggle between the 5 families over who should rule, and its people have often borne the consequences. But in hindsight, those were good days, as the people of Minkai have faced many more challenges since the death of prophecy. After the fall of Lunghua, many believed Minkai was best positioned to be its successor, the new great power of Tian Xia. Its 5 imperial families had been blessed by the goddess Shizuru, after all. The murder of the last emperor Higashiyama Shigure and the rise of the Jade Regent shattered such hopes. Many feared that the nation had lost its connection to Shizuru and her heavenly court. But unknown to all, a rightful heir to the empire was serving pints and settling bar fights on the other side of the world. Ameiko Kaijitsu knew her family had ties to Minkai, as her Tianmin heritage was clear to any Avestani, but the true magnitude of her lineage was a secret even to her. With a few documents and an imperial seal, Ameiko's life took a dramatic turn, as she became Amatatsu Ameiko, the sole surviving heir of Minkai's imperial families. Always a person of action, Ameiko immediately set out for Minkai, following the trade route established by her ancestors. What she found on the other side was destruction and imbalance. The Jade Regent had taxed the provinces into starvation, bullied the populace into submission, and strained every relationship between Minkai and the other Tian nations. Instead of despairing, Ameiko forged alliances, forced ancient trials, and succeeded in removing the regent from his precarious hold on the throne. Though the Jade Regent's reign was brief in the grand scheme of history, his influence spread deeply and swiftly through Minkai's veins. Many expected the nation to be left in turmoil after years of corruption and the loss of the imperial families, but the hopes placed on Empress Ameiko have generated a wave of optimism in the new era. Minkai buzzes with possibility, attracting people from across the lands eager to benefit from the benevolent new empress. Outside of Minkai, this period is often referred to as the post-regent period, but the local population prefers to call it the Yondori era. According to popular beliefs, the Yondori, the rooster, symbolizes change and new beginnings. Roosters in Minkai are seen as the heralds of Shizuru, crowing to announce the return of the sun as they send their reports to the ruler of heaven. Most residents of Minkai are welcoming this era like a new day, filled with excitement about the potential of what lies ahead. However, this positive outlook hasn't reached everyone, as Minkai is still in the process of mending its damaged relations across Tian Xia and searching for ways to rebuild a broken infrastructure. Food and funds have understandably been a priority, but invested observers are beginning to wonder what the Empress plans to do with the unclaimed imperial crests. It's said that traditions only survive if they serve a purpose in the present. How much will change in the Yondori era? Reform is exciting, but it can also breed resistance. The government of Minkai. The current government of Minkai is quite different from that of previous generations. While the governors still manage provinces, the responsibility of national rule now rests solely on one imperial family for the first time since the fall of the Teikoku shogunate. Moreover, to many in government, Empress Amatatsu Ameiko seems overly impatient, and she is not well steeped in the traditions of her homeland. But she has proven to be a committed and capable leader. She arrived in Minkai with the imperial lessons of her youth, but she had little emotional attachment to the nation's traditional court life. Instead, she observed a system overly reliant on warlords and the samurai elite, a system she believed enabled the rise of the Jade Regent, and one that she felt was not suited to Minkai's future. She made her stance clear in the 5th year of her reign when she officially announced plans to reduce the privileges of the samurai class, requiring those seeking positions of power to demonstrate their qualifications through exams and relevant experience. Now, with over a decade on the throne, she has remained steadfast in her decisions, living up to her reputation for stubbornness. Ameiko often travels away from the imperial palace, preferring to conduct diplomatic visits and regional assessments in person. Rather than summoning people to the throne room, she goes to them, whether to gain popular support or simply because she dislikes being confined indoors for long periods. Unsurprisingly, her reforms have sparked numerous protests among the upper echelons of society, who are still used to being appointed as civil servants and ministers without competition. Some chose to write critiques of Ameiko's leadership, while the more militant left to find sympathetic nations where they could regain their positions and plot revenge. Ameiko thus remains vigilant for signs of invasion and sabotage, and these concerns often distract her from more significant issues facing the country. As a result, she has entrusted the task of monitoring internal and external threats to a new Minister of Foreign Affairs, her trusted advisor, the Kitsune druid Hisei. Hisei, the eldest child of Miyaro, one of the companions who aided Ameiko in reclaiming the throne, has taken her new duties seriously and has become an emissary of the north and a fierce protector of the Forest of Spirits. With Hisei's support, Ameiko has embarked on the challenging task of finding successors for the fallen imperial families. In the past, these families provided balance to Minkai by representing core aspects of its society: the adventurous Amatatsu, the scholarly Higashiyama, the spiritual Shojinawa, the diplomatic Sugimatsu, and the traditional Teikoku. So far, only 2 potential candidates have emerged, though neither is aware that Ameiko sees them as possible successors. Sugiyama Reiji currently lives in Sakakabe, but hails from the Mizumori Province in central Minkai. He is well versed in the histories and mysteries of the land. Reiji has traveled extensively, gaining a reputation for his insatiable curiosity and captivating storytelling. His ancestors were closely tied with the Higashiyama and Sugimatsu families, and his family name, Sugiyama, reflects these ties. The less obvious candidate is Wada Haruhi, an elderly fortune-teller of kobold ancestry who has become more respected than any governor in the south. Haruhi has lived in Oda, the diverse capital of Minkai's most productive farming region, for many years. Though her exact age is unknown, the wealth of oral history she possesses, and the number of locals claiming kinship with her, suggests it is quite high. As a prominent representative of the South, Haruhi insists on meeting with local officials, imperial envoys, and even the Empress when she is in the area. Haruhi is as stubborn as Ameiko, and though she is not human, Ameiko considers her a potentially worthy successor to the imperial seal of spiritual Shojinawa family, as she is a devout follower of Shizuru. The Minkai Gazetteer. Minkai is divided into 8 provinces and 3 semi-independent territories. The 3 territories are the Osogen Grasslands, the Ikakku Peninsula, and the Higashita Coast. The Kyojin Mountains can be considered to form a 4th informal territory as well. The 8 provinces from northwest to southeast are Sankyodai Province, capitaled in Sakakabe, known for silver terraced cities and entertainment; the Hosekikozan Province, capitaled in the city of Enganoka, known for silk, gems, and dyes; Mizumori Province, capitaled in Akafuto, known for trade, lumber, and its connections to the rest of Tian Xia; the Chushin Province, capitaled in the national capital of Kasai, known for tourism, diplomacy, and its imperial court; the Hofunawan Province, capitaled in Shogokabe, known for its international port, its fishing, and its cotton; the Hogosareta Province, capitaled in Wanshi, known for its rice and sake; the Kokuso Province, capitaled in Oda, known for its farming, orchards, and foreign residents; and the Dokaigan Province, capitaled in Hyosai, and known for its copper, bronze, and coral ruins. In addition to the 8 provinces and 3 territories, we'll also take a look in a little more detail at the major waters that surround Minkai, especially the Sea of Xidao and the Athamaru city-states that can be found there, and finally take a closer look at the northern woodland called the Forest of Spirits. The Osogen Grasslands. Under imperial law, the Osogen Grasslands are technically considered a part of the Sankyodai Province, but the province's governors, ruling from the capital of Sakakabe, have long taken a stance of disinterest and non-interference with the barbarians of the Osogen, so long as they don't intrude upon the more civilized western reaches. Near the Forest of Spirits, Osogen is inhabited by 2 related tribal peoples: the Utare, fishermen and hunters who keep to the coasts, and the Yumogu, nomadic herders with an ill-deserved reputation for deceit. Both peoples were slowly driven back to the grasslands by the Minkai people in a centuries-long struggle that culminated in the rise of the Teikoku shogunate. The Yumogu and the Utare have never been able to seriously challenge the might of the empire since then, but the western reaches of Osogen have been contested between generations of settlers and barbarians. The largest city in the grasslands is Hokoshi, marking the beginning of the Minkan side of the Spirit Road. Despite the Osogen Grasslands' reputation for barbarism, travelers are finding that Hokoshi, the largest city in the north, serves as an ideal final stop before a journey into or from the Forest of Spirits. The city offers local delicacies made from northern ingredients, and it boasts a growing number of Spirit Road guides, eager to assist both tourists and seasoned adventurers. Under Ameiko's reign, diplomatic relations with the far north have flourished, as the region played a crucial role in helping her overthrow the Jade Regent. Enthusiasm for the region has gone both ways, as kami have been increasingly emerging from the Forest of Spirits, wandering across the Osogen Grasslands and making their presence known in Hokoshi and across the territory. Visitors from Hongal and all the way from Avistan across the Crown are also more common here than ever before. The Ikakku Peninsula. The northernmost lands of Minkai are poor and scarcely inhabited, but those who do make their homes amid the frosty cliffs prove exceptionally proud and independent. Most eke out hard lives from the cold stone of the Kamefushi Mountains and the varied mineral treasures that can be found there. Several villages, however, benefit from the region's geological instability and mineral richness, being home to mineral springs. Such springs are often accompanied by temples dedicated to Yamatsumi, Kofusaki, or Chizhong, and boast remarkable medical, spiritual, or magical healing properties. Few of these mystical resorts promote their remarkable waters, believing that the spirits will guide those most in need to the springs, which sometimes prove quite treacherous to reach. Though over the past decades this region has been largely untouched by the rule of the Jade Regent, its residents rejoiced just as much when he was defeated. Many staunchly opposed the changes that were sweeping through the land, and actively sheltered fugitives from the regime. Not all the monasteries of Kamefushi Mountains are equally welcoming, though. A cluster of mysterious hot springs known as the 7 Venom Springs are connected to an ancient temple of Nalanivati. These acrid-smelling pools bubble with a poison of 7 deadly nagas, said to be buried beneath the mountain here. The springs are notoriously hard to find, supposedly hidden by the illusions maintained by the temple's mysterious caretakers. In addition to the Ikakku territory's various remote monasteries and sheltered mountain tribes, there exists another significant point of interest, the Ghost Path. The Ghost Path is a semi-legendary pathway that leads from Minkai down into the depths of the Darklands. It is carved as a series of ledges and caves that lead from an extinguished caldera on Mount Kumijinja in the Ikakku Peninsula into Sekamina. According to legend, the mountain god Yamatsumi caused Mount Kumijinja to erupt during the Age of Monsters. While the horrific event, the tremendous heat melted the glaciers in the mountain, further feeding the rivers running through the green valleys, and the ash from the eruption provided fine fertilizer for the earth below. As such, once his wrath was satiated, the land began to renew and grow back, even more fruitful than before. Mount Kumijinja has remained dormant ever since. A vast hollow caldera opens at its center onto an underground lake located deep in the earth below. The caldera is so wide, in fact, that the lakebed below the caldera is the only place in the whole of Sekamina that is exposed to direct sunlight from above. On the shores of this deep underground lake lies the Oni city of Shirogoku. A particularly pallid breed of cave Oni rule the spiral-shaped city of Shirogoku in a mockery of the kami above. These Oni are not the hedonistic creatures of vengeance and appetite that most on the surface are used to. Instead, they work collaboratively and collectively, seemingly driven to some profane and unspoken greater goal or purpose. Though what that terrible aim may be, only the insane may guess. According to one popular historical narrative, in 2670, General Ishanda Aiko of the Teikoku shogunate led an expedition down the Ghost Path to raze the city of Shirogoku and deny the Oni their stronghold of power in Minkai. Ishanda's entire army was annihilated, and no survivors ever returned to the surface. For this reason, even today, most people, even the remote monks of the mountains, give Mount Kumijinja a wide berth. The Higashita Coast. Just as Osogen is considered a part of Sankyodai, the villages of the Higashita Coast are officially lorded over by the Dokaigan Province and its capital of Hiyosai. However, this territory is also largely self-governed, and its people are heavily influenced by the independent kami of the vast Sesaragi forest, said to have been the ancestral home of the legendary hero Okirori Tomoko. Tomoko was a human welcome among the kami, as he is said to have mediated a resolution between the proud kami lords of the forest and of the Warashi River. Ever since, those of his kinsfolk who have walked the forest's path have been granted advice in the form of visions and whispers from its ancient guardians. Even beyond the forest, tales of the kami and ancestral spirits have ensnared the imaginations and traditions of what might otherwise be a string of poor coastal fishing villages. For generations, the coast dwellers have gathered riches from the sea, crafting incredibly fine works from driftwood, pearl, coral, and urchin shells, and other materials of inherent beauty. Their artistry tends to have a morbid bent, however, with a focus on 114 types of gruesome and generally ironic deaths depicted in their various sculptures. Though sometimes grisly, this artwork has become incredibly popular across Minkai, and many go to great lengths to gather all examples of the 114 deaths. The Kyojin Mountains. The Kyojin Mountains are a vast mountain range that function as the spine of the Minkai Peninsula. They separate the east and west side of the country with an impossible barrier of rock and granite. In its highest peaks, communities of cloud giants are said to dwell, and mighty rocks can be seen flying from those remote reaches. The permanent glaciers of these peaks serve as the source of many of Minkai's important rivers. The Kosokunami and Chijonami rivers that feed Lake Tsukishizuku in the north, the Warashi and Sakahiyaku rivers that nourish the Higashita Coast in the east, and finally the Kamiteki and Awahana rivers in the south that flow out of the ports of Kasai and Wanshi respectively. The Kyojin Range boasts several important named mountains, including Mount Kazunan in the north and Mount Yogan in the south. Mount Kazunan is home to some impressive mountain villages, which some in Minkai make the trek to, simply to view the magnificent vistas which overlook the beautiful Ningyo Gulf. Those who have seen it claim the sunrise here is the most beautiful in the world. Meanwhile, Mount Yogan is a volcanic mountain, and home to Jiru Karakaza, one of the oldest and most powerful of the underworld dragons, who dwells in the molten caves beneath it. Over the years, he has raided numerous caravans, accumulated a huge hoard, and established a formidable reputation among his neighbors. According to some recent troubling reports, this ancient dragon has his eyes on Hiyosai, not far from his mountainous lair. The Sankyodai Province. The area around the Sankyodai Mountains was, in ancient times, the domain of various powerful Yaoguai, and some of their monumental ruins can still be found in the old mountains. Culture in Sankyodai is dominated by its capital city, Sakakabe, situated at the end of the Jiko River. Built on a favorable landing on an otherwise treacherous coast, the concentric terraces of Sakakabe climb the hills that overlook the narrow shoreline. The lowest terraces lean on the ruins of a stone fortress, built millennia ago, whose ancient walls, adorned with reliefs of ancient warriors, are almost completely hidden by modern structures. Sakakabe is famous for trading in silver and pearls. Silver is extracted in the nearby Sankyodai Mountains, where several fortresses protect the mines from bandits and evil humanoids. Pearls are fished along the entire northwestern coast, where an abundance of coral reefs and natural lagoons favor the growth of oysters and conches. The prosperity of Sakakabe is mirrored by its culture. Besides rich shrines and temples, the town boasts a refined entertainment district that is famous for both its tea houses and theaters, which are second only to those in Kasai. The high standard of living in the town's middle class, coupled with the somewhat lenient attitude of its governor, has allowed the Yakuza to thrive in most of their traditional activities, especially gambling. The openness and appeal of these games have become something of an attraction for visitors, lending the city's single Yakuza group a measure of legitimacy not found elsewhere in the country. Hosekikozan Province. Stretching from the coast to Lake Tsukishizuku, Hosekikozan is a north-central western province known for its rolling fields and its raising of silkworms. Its capital city is Enganoka, a younger city than Sakakabe, but similarly built in a favorable landing spot on the west coast of Minkai. Enganoka is an important commercial port. The trading activity concentrates in the open market located behind the port, with wares ranging from ordinary cereals to fish. Luxury goods are also available in the Kuroyane market, one of Minkai's most famous and luxurious commercial venues. The chief exports of Enganoka, though, are silk, coming from the mulberry orchards of the nearby hills, and rock alum, widely used to dye fabric, and almost exclusively extracted in the domain of the governing Sikutsu family. Across the nation, Enganoka has a reputation for catering to decadent tastes, legal and illegal, that only the wealthiest can afford, giving rise to an oft unmerited condition among both city dwellers and nearby villagers, known as the Enganoka arrogance. Mizumori Province. The Mizumori Province follows the Tagiryu River, all the way north almost to the banks of Lake Tsukishizuku. It is a heavily wooded territory, as the evergreen forests between the Mekkyo and Tagiryu rivers are ancient and have trees that reach staggering heights. It is capitaled in the port city of Akafuto, which naturally takes advantage of its proximity to the woodlands to become the nation's premier dealers of lumber and hardwoods. The second largest port of Minkai and the terminal of the empire's major fluvial route, Akafuto boasts a population of more than 40,000. A major center of lumber trade in Tian Xia, it exports a variety of raw and semi-finished products, and its large junks are the Minkai crafts most likely to be seen sailing along the coasts of Tianjin and in foreign ports in general. The most famous temple of Akafuto, Ukwashi-ji, is dedicated to Kofusaki, who blesses the fields and the rich harvests that seasonally flow down the Tagiri River and from Akafuto to markets across the nation. Akafuto is also the seat of the Juhimeyo School, a monastic institution traditionally frequented by young nobles who aspire to become clerks at the imperial court. A city of remarkable political stability, Akafuto has been ruled by the governors of the Moniwa family almost continuously for 11 centuries. However, the city's governor, Moniwa Kamon, was among the first to swear fealty to the Jade Regent, a choice which has earned him the suspicion of the new Empress Amaterasu. The Chushin Province. The Chushin Province, located in the southwest of the country, has always been the heart of Minkai. The largest and most prosperous province of Minkai hosts the capital, and the highest number of feudal domains, which are mostly located in the bountiful land between the Tagiryu and Kamitaki River. Even before the fall of the Teikoku shogunate, the capital was found here. The mighty city of Udo was constructed upstream on the Kamitaki River, close to where the land began to grow mountainous and rugged as it rises up to meet the Kyojin mountain range. Udo was razed during the battle that marked the end of Teikoku supremacy and the rise of the modern nation of Minkai. In the centuries since it was destroyed, the city has largely been reclaimed by nature, leading bandits to frequently use the maze-like ruins as hideouts, tempting tomb robbers to plunder the ancient tombs of Teikoku shoguns, and serving as the source for endless tales of deathless soldiers and enraged rulers past. After its destruction, the capital was moved to Kasai, the capital city of the province and now the nation. Kasai is a bustling city with more than 100,000 inhabitants and the main center of foreign commerce. Founded to serve as a hub port connecting the main sea lanes of the Xidao Gulf to Udo, the previous capital, Kasai experienced rapid growth and was a commercial power even before it became the capital. The capital of Kasai is a microcosm of Minkai itself. Kasai society is structured by a strict social hierarchy based more on tradition and family heritage than wealth. At the top are the nobility, including the imperial family, clan lords, and their retainers. Below them are the samurai and lesser nobility, followed by commoners, such as farmers, artisans, and merchants, with merchants actually ranking lowest among them. The hinin occupy the lowest social status, comprising outcasts, entertainers, beggars, gamblers, and those involved in butchery and handling of the dead. Ronin and religious figures like monks and clerics exist outside the normal hierarchy, with clergy shown respect, but actually having little influence over secular life. Minkai's culture places high value on pride, dignity, and the maintaining of social propriety, with an emphasis on acknowledging others' pride to preserve their dignity as well. Causing embarrassment can bring shame, and showing negative emotions is seen as a sign of weakness. The separation of personal and public life is crucial, leading outsiders to sometimes perceive Kasai's residents as aloof, though their emotions are just as strong as those in any other culture. The people of Kasai are skilled in the complex social interactions that permeate their daily lives. The city of Kasai is a huge metropolis, and any gazetteer can only briefly touch upon the wonders of this beautiful and inscrutable city. Important locations in Kasai include Inu Island, a small island situated at the mouth of the Habegawa River. This island is dominated by a large lighthouse that breaks the canopy of the island's thick copse of trees. A few homes supporting the family of the lighthouse keeper and their support staff can be found on the island as well. The Golden Ghost Pagoda. Once the pride of the city, the gold-plated Kurin Pagoda now stands as a haunted tower in the heart of Kasai. Known locally as the Golden Ghost Pagoda, it only manifests on nights devoid of natural light. The pagoda was originally a monument to Setsune Kuga of the Perfected Blade, who founded Kasai. 4 centuries ago, the remains of many interred within were stolen by mysterious thieves, driving the spirits mad. The priests of the Temple of the Sun's Blade attempted to seal these restless spirits, but their exorcisms have so far failed. Since then, the whole pagoda has vanished from sight, only reappearing on moonless nights. The pagoda's grounds remain closed and guarded, both to keep intruders out and to prevent anything from within escaping. The Reeds. The Reeds is the only part of Kasai that could be considered a slum, home to most of the city's hinin population. Numerous families live in cramped, interconnected houses, where crime and poor sanitation are constant dangers. Most residents accept their low status, but some, like the outspoken Mother Mariko, resist. A 72-year-old widow who has only left Kasai once, Mother Mariko openly criticizes the Hitsugi Gumi, the notorious and most widespread Yakuza group in the city. Red Lantern Row. This main thoroughfare through the Red Lantern district is the center of Kasai's entertainment and adult recreation, offering patrons a chance to escape their worries. The area is home to brothels, theaters, inns, sake taverns, tea houses, gambling dens, and a thriving black market. This district is surrounded by the Habegawa River and canal system, with access limited by 7 guarded bridges. All visitors must leave their weapons at the bridges, although those willing to pay an exception tax can purchase a wooden token that allows them to carry their weapons within the district, as long as they remain sheathed. The Jade Mantis Dojo. Saiko has only recently taken over this dojo, where she teaches kenjutsu, the art of the sword. She inherited the dojo after her father's death, and had been running it successfully until recently. A mysterious illness has afflicted her students, leaving them incapacitated and unable to defend the dojo's honor during a recent challenge from the Rising Dragon dojo. As a result, the dojo sign was taken, leaving Saiko and her students humiliated. The Baku Theater. Named after a mythical beast that devours nightmares, this theater showcases a diverse array of performances from across Tian Xia, including traditional music, kabuki, wayang shadow puppetry, and po lian throat singing. What distinguishes this theater is its use of illusion and subtle magic to enhance its shows. Daichi owns and runs the theater, and his son Dijo creates most of the magical effects. The wayangs prefer to remain behind the scenes, leaving human staff to handle the audience and business dealings. Twice a year, they invite the city's small wayang community to celebrate major cultural holidays with elaborate shadow plays and festivities, during which the boundary between the material plane and the plane of shadow is said to blur. The Sorrowful Tiger Sake House. This sake house is a popular gathering spot for ronin, disenfranchised samurai, and the local constabulary, who often stop by to break up drunken brawls. The owner, Arundo, is a tough old warrior who ensures that any guest who damages his sake house will face his wrath. Arundo also runs an employment service of sorts for warriors seeking work, using his connections with the city's import office, Yakuza, and several lesser families to match warriors with tasks suited to their skills. The offices of the Hitsugi Gumi. The most notorious group of Yakuza in the city, this group are marked by tattoos that indicate their service and rank, with higher-ranking members even receiving spell tattoos from Yakuza sorcerers. Eguchi Zoisaito is the current head of the family, having risen to power unexpectedly after his father's death. Although he indulges in few vices, Zoisaito visits the Fox's Grove almost nightly. From the Hitsugi-gumi's public office, which operates as a legitimate importer of clay and building supplies, Zoisaito upholds the traditions of the Eguchi family and maintains law and order in the Hitsugi district, the Red Lantern district, and the Reeds. The Badger's Folly Bathhouse. Operated by Yu and Otaru, this bathhouse is renowned for its pristine facilities, attentive service, and the trio of taxidermied badgers that watch over the main bath. Fed by a natural hot spring, the bathhouse's mineral-rich waters are believed to have various healing properties. Business was thriving here until Yu discovered a young guest's body, gruesomely mutilated, floating in the bath one morning. Now rumors circulate that the victim's spirit rises nightly from the water, seeking out the one responsible for their death among the bathhouse's patron and staff. The Setting Sun Cemetery. This ancient cemetery is believed by locals to be haunted, and a small shrine was built by residents to appease these restless spirits. The cemetery was once part of a larger temple grounds, but the construction of the canal system over 200 years ago separated it from the sacred site. The spirits, angered by this insult, occasionally make their displeasure known in and around the cemetery. Bodies are still occasionally buried here, typically by the Hitsugi-gumi, who use the site to dishonor fallen enemies and traitors. The Temple of the Sun's Blade. Dedicated to Kasai's patron deity, Shizuru, the goddess of ancestors, honor, swordplay, and the sun, this temple stands as the oldest and most grandiose in the city. The temple grounds, along with the residences of its priests and essential staff, are encircled by Kasai's intricate canal system, with access limited to ornate bridges. The Monastery of the Thunderous Cricket. Dedication to the perfection of mind and body under the god Irori, this monastery is known for its large golden bell, a magical landmark that amplifies the voice of anyone who speaks into it by 100-fold. Many of the monks here are deaf or hard of hearing. An old tale tells of a lowly initiate who once used the bell to awaken the entire city when its inhabitants were overcome by a magical slumber. The monks guard the bell carefully, ensuring it is not used for selfish or mischievous purposes. The Rising Dragon Dojo. Instructor Isamu is filled with pride after his dojo's recent victory over the Jade Mantis Dojo, with whom the Rising Dragon has had a long-standing rivalry. The Jade Mantis Dojo was once a formidable opponent, but the Rising Dragon's latest victory was so decisive that Isamu's students brazenly stole the opposing dojo's sign, which is now displayed upside down beneath their own. The Tortoise Feather Stable. A man named Aburatsubo runs the stable and livery, which houses and cares for the personal steeds of some of the city's wealthiest and most respected residents. In addition to offering exceptional care for the animals, the stable once functioned as a unique dojo, where Aburatsubo trained some of the nation's finest sumo wrestlers. Though now retired from the world of competitive wrestling, following a betrayal by his last protege, Aburatsubo still maintains a fighting ring in one of his barns. While he claims to be fully retired, a part of him clings to the passions of his youth. The Temple of Woe. The worship of Yeijing, the god of harsh justice, punishment, and murder, was not widely practiced in Kasai before the Jade Regent's reign, but it has seen a significant rise in followers in recent years. Many of the city's judges still come from the temple's burgeoning priesthood, and the ranks of the constabulary are increasingly filled by its congregation and attendant monks. Though Empress Amaterasu has tried to close the temple since coming to power, the temple's high priest Tsunan is politically astute and has protected the temple under the laws of religious freedoms. The Imperial Jade Academy. This prestigious academy teaches the arcane arts to those with talent and wealth to attend. While the school offers courses in divination and elemental control, it also teaches herbalism, alchemy, and ancient medical traditions. The academy's head, Soseki, is rumored to have been raised in the wilderness by a kitsune woman. Known for his wisdom and subtle humor, Soseki is popular among his students. His Jade Eye, a potent magical artifact passed down among the Academy's masters, supposedly grants him the ability to see anything within the Academy grounds. The Tree of Souls. A sisterhood of priestesses devoted to Tsukio tends to this immense cherry tree, considering it and the land within 121 steps of its branches to be sacred. The faithful believe the tree to be immortal, with its sap possessing extraordinary healing properties, though to tap the tree for this sap would be the ultimate blasphemy. Some legends describe the tree as the very soul of the Minkai Empire, suggesting that the empire cannot fall until the Great Tree of Souls does. However, the tree had stopped blossoming under the rule of the Jade Regent, only to flower again when the Empress Amaterasu was crowned. The Flying Leopard Dojo. This meticulously maintained dojo has few students, all trained by the stern and solitary instructor Chen Lao Wan. He teaches various martial arts and archery, but he also serves as an agent for the Kusarigama. Chen stirs conflicts between his two rival dojos, the Jade Mantis Dojo and the Rising Dragon Dojo, using these clashes to test for potential recruits for his organization. Recently, he has focused on recruiting Saiko, the head of the Jade Mantis dojo, by orchestrating an attack by the Rising Dragon that left her dojo disgraced, hoping to leverage her shame and desperation to draw her into the fold. The Imperial Garden. The largest garden in the city, the Imperial Garden boasts a vast array of ornate ponds, meditation gardens, and rare plants found nowhere else in Tian Xia. Legends say that fae and spiritual beings once roamed these sacred grounds, engaged in pleasant conversations with past emperors. However, such stories have faded from memory, as no new encounters have been reported in decades. The Teardrop Tea House. Visitors come to the Teardrop Tea House to sip tea, read poetry, watch small theater performances, and reflect on personal tragedies, as doing so is believed to honor the spirits of those who have passed on. Performers are expected to take on the roles of deceased poets, authors, and playwrights during their performances, channeling their spirits into their work. The tea house's owner, Mrs. Nakahara, is a descendant of one of the founding families of Kasai. She always insists that the performance stage be left empty for an hour after the afternoon service, a time reserved for the spirits of great artists who died before completing their greatest works. The Fox's Grove. This neighborhood is home to some of the most sought-after courtesans in the city, who serve as companions to senior military officials and lesser nobility. These courtesans do not serve those of lower status, and are treated almost as nobility themselves. Notably, the courtesan Shimada Mari has a controlling interest in the Hitsugi-gumi Yakuza group. Eguchi Zoisaito, the Yakuza leader, is so infatuated with Mari that he will do almost anything for her. Those in the know are aware that Zoisaito is one of the youngest and most effective leaders the Hitsugi-gumi has ever had, largely due to Mari's strategic advice and mystical support. The Imperial Palace. The seat of power of the Empress Amaterasu Ameiko, the Imperial Palace is more than just a stately residence for the lords of Minkai. It is also a fortified multi-level castle, designed with a number of tactical and magical defenses built into the grounds of the palace. A series of moats, bridges, and causeways controls access to the Imperial Palace, all under the watchful eye of archers in the walls and surrounding towers. The grounds of the Imperial Palace constitute an entire island, dominated by a massive man-made plateau upon which the fortified fortress rests. 2 moats separate the island from the rest of Kasai, and are kept free of boat traffic by aggressive patrols of the Typhoon Guard. Within the grounds themselves, the island includes both a public marketplace and several interconnected parks. The people are granted access to these locations during the day, but the guard maintains an unyielding curfew at night. In the heart of the palace lies the throne room. 6 stone columns of solid jade flank the approach to an ornate jade throne atop a short dais in this massive chamber. Banners hang along the walls above detailed frescoes of mountains, forests, and samurai engaged in the arts of archery, swordplay, calligraphy, and flower arranging. For over 1,000 years, the emperors of Minkai have ruled their empire from this room, seated upon the jade throne. Said to have been created by the goddess Shizuru's lover, the moon god Tsukiyo, the jade throne is in fact a powerful artifact, both a symbol of the emperor's divine right to rule and the guardian of that right. Only a member of one of Minkai's imperial families, bearing one of the sacred imperial seals and the blessing of the previous emperors, can claim the title of emperor and thereby use the full powers of the Jade Throne. Although he once sat the Jade Throne, the country's previous ruler, the Jade Regent, was never able to fully claim the power or title of the emperor himself, thanks to these magical restrictions. Ameiko, however, has access to the full power of the throne, imbuing her with the promised power of the goddess. The Hofunawan Province. South of the Kamiteki River is a small forested peninsula that comprises the southwesternmost province of Minkai. It is called the Hofunawan Province, and it is capitaled in Shogokabe, a rugged city which overlooks the bay at a confluence of several streams and irrigation canals. The chief fishing port in Minkai boasts a mile-long wharf from which a multitude of junks sail out every day to fish the bountiful waters of the Sorui Gulf. Shogokabe is a peaceful and welcoming town, known throughout the nation for its symbol and regional specialty, the purple Sorui squid. The fishermen here are highly practical when it comes to both their work and their faith, and the city's wharves are lined with dozens of shrines dedicated to deities of the sea and storm from across the world. Statues of Heifeng account for almost 3/4 of the monuments, but images of the faiths of Gosrae, Kelizandri, Valani, Dagon, and even more obscure faiths might also be found here. Few fishermen claim to know all the faiths represented along the seafront, or from what lands they hail, but if tithing a few coins to multiple deities wins them bountiful catches, the sailors consider it money well spent. The Hogosareta Province. The Hogosareta Province is a small province that straddles the Awahana River. Its capital city is Wanshi, an important commercial port of the south coast of Minkai. It harbors a well-defended naval base, built to protect the reserve of the imperial fleet from sudden raids. Like Shogokabe, the city of Wanshi bases its economy on fishing and farming rather than on commerce, and the fertile surrounding plains are put to a wide variety of agricultural uses. The best horses in the empire come from the region's ranches, with the majority sold to support the imperial cavalry. In part because of the city's association with the nation's military, canny farmers along the Awahana River have turned much of their rice crop over to the production of sake. Such ventures have proven so fruitful that now hundreds of thousands of gallons of sake, sochu, wine, and medical alcohols flow down the river for sale in Wanshi every year. This practice makes the nearby hills and forests a favorite home of many tanukis, which prove to be both a curse and a blessing for the regional brewers. The Kokuso Province. The Kokuso Province covers the Oda Peninsula and includes the island of Aogaito. Its capital city is Oda, which is also sometimes called the Granary of Minkai. Oda's countryside hosts the most productive rice paddies in the empire. The city itself has seen the coming and going of thousands of Tian immigrants, recruited to work as farmhands in the rich estates of the local feudal lords. Ruled by daimyo Kinoshita Domeki, the impossibly ancient patriarch of the Kinoshita family, Oda is the Minkai city with the most resident foreigners, mostly Tian merchants, artisans, and restaurateurs who have come over the generations to support their own communities across the Xidao Gulf and beyond. Numerous criminal groups have grown influential in Oda, with bandits preying on farmers and travelers headed to the city, several yakuza groups running discreet rackets in the city itself, and pirate junks watching for poorly guarded merchant ships sailing too close to Aogaito Island. While technically the feudal domain of the Kinoshita family, Aogaito Island, with its numerous coves and nearby shoals, has long served as a base for piracy in the Gulf and beyond. While the younger members of the Kinoshita family insist that their family has no ties to the pirates that hunt near their lands, daimyo Kinoshita Domeki has positioned himself as someone who actively opposes them. This seems to be mostly posturing. Many say he is either too senile to effectively combat the threat, or else he is a master trickster and is in fact the secret master of the seafaring bandits. Dokaigan Province. Stretching from Kokuso Province to the Higashita Coast, the Dokaigan Province is Minkai's largest southeastern province, and the only major civilized area to lie along the eastern coast of the nation. Its capital is Hiyosai, which is sometimes called the Eastern Treasury. Hiyosai grew rich on the copper mining of the hills south of the city, and the manufacture of bronze objects, which are exported to Kasai together with the raw materials needed for the empire's coinage. With frightening unpredictability and varying organization, the eel-like creatures known as the Seokois, who originate from the coral complexes deep in the Okayo Ocean, attack ships as they leave Hiyosai's port, dragging metal goods and sailors alike back to their dens in the coral ruins of the drowned city of Sangoshi. The legend of the drowned city is known to all who live in the region. The island city of Sangoshi crumbled into the sea long centuries ago, drowning a metropolis of beauty, art, and science beneath the waves. In the centuries since, the nearby coral reefs have overgrown the underwater ruins, transforming them into a vast maze of living caves. Legends say that every 44 years the strange wonders of Sangoshi arise from the water for one day, only to sink again at day's end. In any case, in response to raids from the sea, the city's harbor patrol has grown into a veritable navy, captained by daring samurai and their students, who train endlessly with a variety of polearms. Some families in and around Hiyosai claim to be descended from the survivors of Sangoshi, who are known for their unusual fairness and green eyes. The Sea of Xidao. Minkai's closest neighbors are not surface dwellers, but sea dwellers. The Xidao Gulf is home to the largest aquatic settlements in Tian Xia, known collectively as the Xidao Alliance. This confederation of over 50 diverse city-states, ranging from vibrant coral domes to ancient draconic palaces, has remained united for millennia, due to the persistent threats lurking beneath the Gulf's waters. Historically, Xidao society revered sea dragons, constructing grand temples and palaces in their honor during the Age of Dragons. The catastrophic event known as Earthfall ended dragon rule in much of Xidao's territories, and it also widened the Ayamaru Trench, a once-ignored valley that became a source of great evil. The trench unleashed a plague of undead, prompting the Xidao states to form a military alliance to combat this threat. Though they succeeded in pushing the undead back, the dark forces in Ayamaru continued to rise each year, growing stronger as long as the trench remained open. This ongoing threat led to the formal creation of the Xidao Confederation, as the city-states sought a permanent solution to the menace from the trench. Under its waters, the Gulf is a dynamic and ever-changing environment, with its landscape transforming dramatically throughout the year. During warmer months, kelp forests rapidly grow from the nutrient-rich depths, creating a lush habitat alongside the Gulf's vibrant coral reefs, On calm, clear days, sailors can glimpse these underwater forests, coral formations, and the sprawling aquatic cities all the way from the surface. The gulf is divided by the Ayamaru Trench, which runs north to south, separating Xidao into eastern and western halves. The eastern side is home to Yashabaru, Xidao's capital, and Uruknus, a historic city-state built around ancient dragon ruins. The western side hosts Poshabla, the western capital and its military hub. The trench's depths are the deepest in the Gulf, surrounded by a chilling dead zone, inhabited by undead sea creatures. The shallower regions are rumored to contain sinkholes leading to underground caverns, often used as hideouts by criminals, despite the dangers posed by the undead. The Xidao Gulf is also affected by the Tempest, a zone of constant, unpredictable storms centered around the grieving dragon Lung Feng, the Azure Serpent, an ancient sea dragon who created this deadly tempest after her child was killed by a sailor, and now roams the Gulf, her grief manifesting in destructive storms. Despite these perils, the Gulf attracts traders and land-dwelling sailors who seek to uncover the treasures of the elusive Waiga, floating islands that briefly rise from the depths before collapsing and dragging back down everything to the seafloor. These islands often bring forgotten treasures, as well as the restless bones of the dead, to the surface, posing both opportunities and dangers for those who encounter them. The Xidao Confederacy is governed by a Grand Council, composed of representatives from its various city-states, who meet annually in Yashabaru during the convocation of the Grand Council. The High Matriarch, currently Uraka Dusi, presides over the council and serves as Xidao's primary diplomat. The city-states have diverse forms of governance, ranging from monarchies to republics. The collective Xidao army, based near Pobashabla, defends against threats from Ayamaru and is led by High Commanders Thive and Sawtooth, who are non-Athamaru, which has caused some tension in the past. Points of interest in Xidao include the city of Yashabaru. Yashabaru, the largest city-state in Xidao, serves as the capital of the Confederacy. The city's kaleidoscopic domes and renowned coral and glass towers rise above the surface of the Xidao Gulf, showcasing the splendor of Xidao's Center for Diplomacy and Governance. The annual convocation of the Grand Council is held here, gathering leaders from across the underwater realm to discuss and decide on matters affecting the entire Gulf. Yashabaru is also one of the few city-states in Xidao with above-water structures, designed to facilitate interactions with surface nations. The city's atmosphere is heavily influenced by politics and decorum, a tone that some other city-states view as elitist. Due to its significant trade and craftsmanship, Yashabaru is home to many temples dedicated to Abadar and Daikitsu. The city's population is diverse, with Athamarus making up only about half of its inhabitants. Pobashabla. Known as Xidao's western capital, Pobashabla's culture is deeply shaped by its substantial military presence. Positioned strategically between Ayamaru to the east and Wanshu to the west, it plays a key role in Xidao's defense, housing and training the majority of the Confederacy's troops. While outsiders may view the city-state as austere and militaristic, Pobashabla is also a vibrant cultural hub, hosting a variety of events that celebrate the resilient and spirited nature of its people. Popular activities include martial arts competitions, sports tournaments, and the annual Serpent's Ball, a courtship festival that draws participants from across Xidao. Shrines to Heifeng, General Susumu, and Nalinavati are common. Despite its orderly appearance, tensions have been growing between the local population and the expanding military, with residents accusing the army of encroaching on their city and destroying local landmarks to build new facilities. In response, a separatist faction is formed, aiming to reclaim the city from what they perceive as occupying forces. Uruknus. Uruknus, situated at the east of Ayamaru, is built upon the remnants of an ancient dragon palace, and was once the capital of Xidao. In ancient times, it served as the seat of the Sea Dragon Court, where disputes among the city-states were resolved. Today, the city retains its aura of ancient tradition and is home to the Xidao's largest research archives and magical academies, which focus on studying both the surface and the deep ocean. The city's inhabitants primarily worship Shaolin and Qizhong, though Uruknus is also notable for its dragon cults, families that claim dragon ancestry and venerate sea dragons as their forebears. These influential groups have recently advocated for the revival of sea dragon worship, a move that has sparked some controversy. The dragon cults have backed the construction of new dragon temples in Uruknus, aligning themselves with these powerful beings, even as some among their number threaten Xidao's trade with their summoned storms. Muru. Located in northwestern Xidao, Muru has earned a reputation as the city of pirates, a chaotic and lawless city-state that attracts rogues, fences, and fugitives. The streets are lined with taverns and gambling houses, offering adventurers and mercenaries quick work. Despite its notoriety, Muru is tolerated by the Confederacy due to its control over the richest pearl-gathering waters in Xidao. The city is particularly known for exporting black pearls, which are highly sought after by artisans across Tian Xia. The most lucrative industry in Muru, however, is scavenging, where locals sift through shipwrecks for valuable items. Some have even allied with sea dragons, using magical storms to sink ships before looting them. Although this practice is officially condemned by Muru's leaders, little is done to stop it, as many officials benefit from the profits. The Ayamaru. Ayamaru, once a sacred burial ground for Xidao, is now a cursed trench that continuously unleashes undead horrors upon the surrounding city-states. Before Earthfall, it was believed that the trench led to the underworld, and bodies were ceremoniously lowered into its depths to ensure their eternal rest. However, after Earthfall, the trench widened, awakening malevolent entities that had taken refuge in the darkest corners within. Since then, the restless dead have poured out of Ayamaru, attacking nearby settlements. The trench's sides are lined with sinkholes leading to a labyrinth of tunnels, some of which open into geothermal caves where criminal organizations have established bases. These caves remain largely unexplored, as does the bottom of Ayamaru, which is rumored to harbor ancient krakens and other monstrous creatures that have feasted on the dead for centuries. The Trade Spires. The Xidao Gulf is scattered with towering coral structures known as trade spires, which serve as both ports and lighthouses. These spires have both underwater and above-ground levels, providing spaces where Xidao traders can meet with foreign merchants, sailors, and travelers. Most trading occurs above the water, with some Xidao craftsmen hiring amphibious brokers to sell their goods. The most sought-after items include steel weapons, tools, armor, ceramics, glassware, and produce like fruits and root vegetables, which are considered exotic delicacies in Xidao. The Dragon Towers. Another type of tower rises out of the waters of the Xidao Gulf. The Dragon Towers mark the territories of the surviving sea dragons. These imposing monuments of smooth marble serve as places where sailors can leave offerings in hopes of gaining the dragon's favor. If a sea dragon is pleased with the tribute, it may calm the surrounding waters, ensuring safe passage through the often turbulent gulf. The towers are a stark contrast to the rough-hewn trade spires, reflecting the regal and unpredictable nature of the dragons they honor. The Forest of Spirits. A final significant region near Minkai, which has shaped its culture and history, is the Forest of Spirits. The forest is a mystical and sometimes dangerous woodland controlled by kami spirits, with most humanoids choosing to experience its majesty from the relative safety of the Spirit Road, a trade route along the southwest coast. The largest village along this route is Ohira, a blend of Hongal, Minkai, and local cultures now bustling with travelers and adventurers interested in exploring the forest. In the northern part of the forest, near the border with Hongal, lies the Chinmoku, an eerie area known for its lost spirits and mysterious snow sculptures. A group of troublesome Oni led by Shinkin have settled in the Chinmoku area, where they live a chaotic but non-threatening life. They enjoy rough games and gambling, but have not shown a great interest in harming travelers. The Hyogikai Clearing, a sacred meeting place for the kami, serves as a boundary to this haunted region. Yagi Bay, on the northeastern coast, hosts a thriving population in interconnected settlements, like Hamanasuno and Maruyama, where the Kyojin Mandate ensures a harmonious relationship between humans and the forest. These villagers maintain this balance through rituals and careful resource management. Tamayo Kimoto, a Tengu sorcerer in Maruyama, is an eccentric yet valued member of the Elder Council here. Her companion, Osekai-san, is a kami who transformed from a lost spirit she found in Chinmoku. Umi Matsui, a kitsune druid, manages a local Risucho station and is known for her playful interactions with visitors. She was raised in Hamanasuno by her kitsune mother and has always lived in the forest. In the south, the forest transforms into a warmer, more inviting area, though still disorienting for travelers. This region is dotted with discarded items that have become home to smaller kami. The Bunkatsu River and the Dokikotsu, a site with massive skulls known as Yokyo, hold deep spiritual significance, with rituals performed there to seek guidance and maintain harmony with nature. The Forest of Spirits remains a place of awe and caution, with its boundaries between worlds increasingly disrupted by outside forces. The forest lacks a formal political or economic structure, focusing instead on maintaining harmony and honoring the sacredness of the land. The majority of its inhabitants are kami, with other spirits being transient and monitored by the kami. The forest is home to smaller groups like kitsune, tengu, and oni, who have their own settlements. Humans are rare residents, often visiting for magical resources or for the kami's favor. Chono Oshima, a human hunter from Ohira, is known for his expertise in navigating the forest and tracking these spirits. He works with the Yurei Shakai to help misguided spirits, but is wary of reckless adventurers, who he believes often threaten the forest's delicate balance. The most powerful kami of the forest is known to be Okojo Kami, a majestic being considered the primary guardian of the forest. Depicted as a gigantic ermine with fiery tails and dragon-like feet, Okojo Kami is rarely seen, but is believed to play a crucial role in the forest's protection and in cosmic balance. More details on Okojo Kami and the other kami of the forest can be found in my Kami and Oni religion video. That is all I'm covering here today, but join me in future videos as I continue to explore the many kingdoms of Tian Xia.